Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coach's Show. I'm Lloyd Shoemaker, your host, and beside me is the star of the show, according to Coach Bill Nees, and that's Coach Heath Butler, the basketball coach here at Piqua High School for the men's team. I want to take an opportunity to thank our sponsors. First of all, we have our number one sponsor, our lead sponsor is the First Choice Paint and Body Shop on North 25A here in Piqua. And then also they're right across the street from the RV Center of Sherry, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram Truck. They are currently under construction of a new facility there, and don't let that throw you when you stop in there to buy a car. They are open for business and will help you pick out the right car for your needs and your family. Also, we want to thank Morris Heating and Cooling, currently located on North Main Street in downtown Piqua. They will be moving their facilities shortly after the first of the year to Young and College Street, so be sure and watch your paper for that particular notice. And also, we want to thank F45 Fitness Center and Gym over on the behind the Wings and Rings on the outside of the Miami Valley Mall. Good place to go if you need a workout during the wintertime. For you golfers out there that need to get in some exercise and swings and keep your legs in shape, good place to go. And we want to thank them for their financial support to WOTVC. Coach, my goodness, could you have started off with any tougher schedule than what you've had? Three out of the 4 teams you've played, they're currently 12-3.
Yeah, and that's life, as we know it in pickle basketball. And that's one of the great things about the game of basketball is that you get the chance to teach young kids kind of how to handle adversity. And it starts, and I'm so proud, and I'm going to have a couple shout outs. We have a 6th grade kid that was really struggling in school, and the coaches, unpaid coaches, volunteer coaches go out of his way. And we're about to finish the first semester in school. He got his grades up, and the coaches, buy him a new book bag, and that's just how you handle adversity. And then, we also have, our junior high or our JV coach, our JV team has not had a lot of success, and they've won 2 games, and our coaches, Coach Hem's done a great job. They haven't won a game since 7th grade, and once again, you have an opportunity to teach these kids how to handle adversity. And then our freshman team has strung a couple wins together here, and they haven't had a lot of success. So, yes, we started out the year tough against tough teams, but I'm so proud of our kids, and we have some very mentally tough kids at the varsity level. That our best basketball is ahead of us. We talked about in the preseason show, we want to peak, in the February tournament time, just hang around, second round in the GWalk North, and then be there at the end.
Yeah, well, you started out, and we'll get to the later games, the ones here you had at home here the last couple of weeks, and talk about the play and the effort there involved and the determination on the part of your boys. But you started out with Wapak, and Wapak is currently 4-1. Mm-hmm. Very strong team, as we talked about in the preseason show, and you lost that ball game 64-53, but it looked like you were in it.
We were in it, and we played 20 minutes of really great basketball. About 12 minutes, we kind of struggled to get our feet wet there a little bit, and you have a lot of guys that don't have a lot of experience. And we battled it, and that's all you can ask is for your kids to continue to battle. And then the next night, Wapak goes out and beats Sydney pretty handily by 18. So Wapak's a very good team, just like every team we've faced so far. We started out the season with a very tough battle. Once again, I'm very proud of how our kids handled that situation on the road. Wapak's a great environment to play the game of basketball. We didn't come out on top, but there's a lot of good things to take from that game.
Yeah, well, then you came back and you had Butler here at home, and 39-37 loss. But could you have drawn up that out-of-bounds play any better to have it executed 99.9% perfect, except to miss the shot?
Yeah, and that goes again to the credit to our kids who we've worked on that in practice. You work on it with a certain group, but that also goes to, a lot of the guys who don't, get to play a lot. Actually, one of them's filming our show right now. And it's real easy to kind of, when you don't play a lot, not to give it your all in practice. But the great thing about that play is that, it was drawn up well. Yeah, it was executed very well by, the guys who are on the floor. But we get great looks in practice from the guys who don't get to play a lot. And I think that helped us just as much as the guys executing. So, we couldn't have drawn it up any better. We couldn't execute any better except for the final shot. So
exactly. Well, at the end of 3 quarters, you were up 45-44 over Wapak. I wanted to mention that when we talked about it being a close game, but then they outscored you 12 points in that 4th quarter. I did want to mention that at the end of the 3, you were right in that ball game. And then the Butler game, You were up 20-18 at halftime. You were down 17. It got scored 21-17 in the last half of the ball game.
Yeah, just Butler is a very good team. They actually just lost to Sydney on Tuesday night by 1. And you know, I think Butler is very much improved. And you know, for 3 quarters, once again, we played very well. We just didn't put 32 minutes together again. But once again, I'm very proud for our kids. With 2 minutes left, we're down 8 in the 4th quarter, and to make a comeback and to have a shot at the end, that's all you can ask for.
Scoring-wise, in that Butler game, Nate had 11 points for you, and Gage had 9. Ben Smeezing had 8, and Hunter Hawk had 3. You got 6 points off your bench out of Harrison and also Brown.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You know, our bench has been very good, and we've put kind of switched the lineup a little bit. Have Caleb Patton coming off, and he's given us a spark, especially in that Tip City game. So you know, we feel very comfortable with our guys, you know, from the top to bottom, with being able to contribute.
Shooting-wise, it looks like you're running somewhere in the mid-40s, mid to upper 40s from the floor, which is not a bad number. You are running fairly good from the free throw line, probably 65 to 75% from there. Where are you losing it? Is it the turnovers?
It's definitely the turnovers. You know, I think rebounding, you know, we're very competitive on the boards. The biggest thing is we're turning it over, and you know, that does 2 things. 1, you're not getting a shot at the rim, and 2, usually when you turn it over, it's sometimes not the number, but it's the type. And we've turned the ball over a lot in the full court play and giving other teams easy shots at the bucket. So you know, that's one thing that comes with experience. Like you said, we only have Nate. Started with us last year. Ben, toward the end of the year, played a lot, but even Ben Schmeezing last year, at the beginning of the year, didn't get a lot of time. So we have a lot of guys that are just learning how to play the varsity game, and when you play a schedule like we do, and you're one of the smallest schools, in your league, you're going to have these times, and it's going to be a learning experience, but what you need is mentally tough kids, emotionally tough kids, and physically tough kids, and I'm very confident that we'll get it fixed. And with the experience that we've gained from these first couple games, I think, like I said, our best basketball is ahead of us.
Can't get any tougher than what you've already had. In that Wapak game, rebounding-wise, you had a total of 25. You had 18 of those on the defensive boards, and in the Butler game, you had 30 rebounds. I don't know what Butler had.
And usually in high school basketball, if you're in the upper 20s or low 30s, you win the rebounding. So I don't know what the other team's stats are, but I think we're very competitive, if not winning the boards. And in any high school basketball game, in any college basketball game, if you take a look at turnovers and rebounds, if you win both those categories, you're going to be in a lot of ball games. So.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that you had 30 against Butler, and you also had 6 block shots in that Butler ball game, and I think again you were outsized with Monin being your tallest guy on the floor most of the time at 6'3".
Yeah, and that just goes to how tough our kids are, and to battle like that, and Nate's very good at getting some tip blocks, and he's done a good job of keeping those in bounds. We also have Hayden Shrub who can get up off the floor a little bit, but you're right. Every team we faced, is taller than us, but that hasn't deterred our kids from competing inside.
Absolutely not, and I think Devon Brown has just got springs in his leg. That kid is coming on like gangbusters.
Yeah, and he's another kid who you talk about. What's the game of basketball do? Are you focused on winning? Are you focused on making individuals better? And he has come a long way as a student, and that's credit to him, and that has allowed him to show his talents on the basketball court. So we're really focused in our program, not focusing on wins and losses, just focusing on the process of becoming better people and becoming better basketball players. And when you have your shot, like Devon's had his shot, to show everybody what you can do, it is great as a manager of a program.
He has got to surprise people when he comes off of that bench. He's not even 6 feet tall. And he's out jumping that game the other night against Greenville. He was out jumping those 6'6", 6'7" guys. Yeah, and doing a good job. And he kind of on the boards, he kind of reminds me a little bit of CJ last year, who just goes in there and gets up on the boards, blocks out good. And in Devon's case, he's just gone over guys.
Right, and CJ was sneaky tall, we like to call him. He was about 6'2". Actually, he's 6'4", 6'5" now, but with very long arms, and he's a very surprising. And Davon does it with athletic ability. And you're right, going against the tall kids, and the Gable kid from Greenville is a Division I kid that's getting some Division I looks, and for Davon to be able to go up like that and to jump like that, that's just a given talent. But at the same point in time, you still have to be a student athlete. You still have to do the right things. You still have to, come to practice to get your shot on the floor. So, yeah, he does surprise a lot of people, and I'm very happy for him just because of the growth we've seen as an individual.
If you're not a natural jumper, okay, and I was not a natural jumper in high school. I just happened to be taller than everybody else. What do you do? What does a young player do to strengthen his legs to be able to jump like that, or is it just a natural thing?
I think that's a natural thing. We talk about, we work very closely with the football team, and I guess the in vogue term is fast twitch fibers or whatever. But a little bit is genetic, and a little bit is how hard you work, at your conditioning and your flexibility. And we do a lot with flexibility. Our workout consists of a weight training where we full squat all the way down just to lengthen out those hamstrings a little bit, and a little bit of a CrossFit type of thing where, once again, we work on full squats, air squats that just lengthen out and increase your flexibility. So I think it's a little bit genetic and a little bit of the work you put in. And since Davon's made the commitment to be a student, he's worked really hard in the weight room, and I think that's just helped him a little bit more. And you are just given the talents you are, and it's how you refine those that make you the player that you are. And you can't have one without the other, in my opinion.
And he's a junior.
He's a junior.
He's a junior. Wow. Well, then we got Tip City. You went down to Tip City, played them, pick up your first win of the year at 48-44. Ben Smeezing sort of lit things up for you that night.
Yeah, he got hot, and we have a lot of guys that can kind of do that, is get hot. The Tip City game was just a great program win. We grinded one out. It's a very tough place to play. We're just very proud of how our kids responded on the road in the GWAC.
You did not allow Tip City to have that big quarter on you. You outscored them in every quarter except the last quarter, and they only picked up 2 points on you there.
Right, and that's just, we finally put together 32 minutes. Once again, it was the experience from the Wapak game, from the Butler game, and also, it was a credit to how our kids prepare and practice. With a Tuesday, Friday kind of rotation of games, it's very hard to get a lot of good practice time on the floor because, one, you're always going to have a practice after a game, and two, the next practice is the practice before a game. So it's really up to the kids, and it's really a credit to the 15 guys we have on varsity for how they continue to prepare, win or lose, on the practice floor.
Other scoring in that game, Gage Smith had 9 and Nate had 9. Only scoring he had off the bench was Caleb Patton, and he scored 8 points off the bench.
And Caleb's kind of found his groove coming off the bench, and allows him to be a lot more aggressive, not to overanalyze stuff too much, just to kind of be athletic, and being left-handed and being about 6 foot tall with very long arms. It allows him to do that, and it gives him a little bit more freedom coming off the bench.
Shooting-wise, again, 47% from the floor, 43% on the threes, only 50% from the free throw line. But you held Tip City to 30% from the floor, 32% on three-pointers, and they were 47% from the free throw line. So your defense did a good job.
Yes, it's very good, and that's one thing that we've kind of trademarked is playing good defense. So very proud for our defensive effort.
Let's talk about the Sydney game, but not very long. Okay, it was not a good night for us. 68-31, Sydney over Piqua, and I know they enjoyed that for a long time up there. But Nate didn't score; only shot 3 times, and I know he was out this past game with the flu. Talking to him in the hall out there, he seems to be like 75-80% back.
And I think that game was, and he won't admit it, but I think he was starting, he didn't feel himself. You can kind of just tell that game. He was just a half step slow. Usually Nate can pull the other team's big guy out and kind of go around him. And he just didn't have that extra half step that he usually has. But once again, give the kid credit for grinding it out, playing against a very good Sydney team. And that was just a case where, watching Sydney, we think Sydney played their best game of the year that night. and we played our worst. And sometimes this happens. And once again, when you play a Tuesday, Friday rotation, you don't have a lot of time to prepare. And it's all about, you know, how you come on game night. And sometimes when you don't have that time to prepare, sometimes you just have, you know, a team take something away and you just can't get out of it just because you haven't had that time to cover everything.
Well, and you don't have much time off. You got a game coming up this Friday night. We're recording this on the 22nd, just before your Troy game, which is another one of those situations where you got another tough game coming up early in the season.
And on the road too.
And on the road.
We've
And
talked
on the
about
road.
schedules,
Yeah.
but we've only had 2 home games, and you know it's tough. You know, with our schedule once again, you know, GWAC North, Wapak, you know, playing on the road. You know, we don't have any cupcakes per se. So you know, we just got to keep battling and be committed to getting better.
But the experience you're gaining is just worth $1 million
Yes,
when you get to
definitely.
the tournament times. It's the tougher you play, the better you are.
Yep.
And the good teams, I always say, play to the level of the competition, and that's what you're doing, and it's going to work for you. But you're going to be off for almost a week. You come back next Thursday, I think it is, the 30th?
Yes.
29th in the holiday tournament.
Yes.
So we want people to be sure and watch for that and come out and watch that. There's going to be a whole bunch of teams in here playing. Girls playing this year?
No, 8 boys teams, 4 small school teams, and I guess we're in the big division. But you know, we play Tecumseh, Tip City, Belmont's also in it, and I think in the small division it's Russia, Troy Christian, Lehman, and Covington.
Yeah, some good basketball players,
Yes,
especially with kids coming out of the Shelby County League.
Definitely.
So you've got this game Friday night with Troy, and then the Sydney thing. What do you go into a game like Sydney, and you know nothing's working? What do you take away from that? Do you just mark it up and go home? And
You take away, you know, how your kids respond to adversity that night. You know, if you watch us, we didn't blame anybody but ourselves. We weren't complaining to the refs. It wasn't the refs' fault. It wasn't the environment's fault. We didn't have any kids. You know, one thing that gets missed is you know, when you go into a hostile environment, and this just is the way basketball is. You know, it's very easy to react to the opposing fans, but not once did any of our kids do that. And you know, so I'm very proud of the toughness they displayed. You know, especially when things go as bad as they did, especially when you're down 19-3 going into the second quarter. It's real easy to start blaming others for your problems. But you know, that was all, you know, on us. And the other thing you judge is, okay, so how do you come back the day after? And it was one of those things versus Sydney where we had practice planned, we get iced out. So then we actually only had 1 day to prepare for Greenville, and that Monday we had one of our best practices of the year. So that's kind of how you judge, you know, what you take out of those games, where sometimes you just don't have it. The other team just is kind of your kryptonite that night. Yep. But the good news is that, you know, we get to see them again on our home floor.
yeah, and you're right. There's not a more hostile environment.
Probably, you know, in 6 years of coaching, that is the greatest environment that we play in. It's a smaller gym, the roof's a little bit lower, the sound just bounces off, and it's loud. And we practice, you know, a little of the turn the music up in our gym, and the kids just play. So, you know, while the result wasn't, it's always, that's why you play high school basketball, is to play in environments like that.
And they're right, and the fans are right on you.
Yes.
I mean, they're not sitting back off the floor like
Right.
they are here or
Right.
Troy, or other, but they're right there on your bench and letting you know what's going on too.
Right.
Before we get into talking about the Greenville game, I want to thank our sponsors again. Our anchor sponsor, First Choice Paint and Body Shop on North Main Street in Pickwood, just across the street from the RV Center of Sherry, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram truck. And then down the street, across the bridge on North Main Street, is Morris Heating and Cooling. I want to thank them for their support and wish them well in their moving to their new facility come the first of the year. And then F45 Fitness Training and Gym over behind the Wings and Rings restaurant there in the strip mall outside the Miami Valley Mall. We really appreciate your financial support to Channel 5 WOTVC. Okay, Greenville, Coach, I got to ask you about this. I've seen you've been watching you for several years on the floor, and you spent more time talking to the officials in that ball game than I can think you ever did.
Yeah.
What, you guys got something in common?
Just the thing that, you know, one thing you want to make sure is you want to give your kids a way to understand how the game is going to be called. And you know, whether it's my misconception or whatever, you know, that's all I wanted was how is this game going to be called? Usually within the first 2 minutes of the game, you can understand, is it going to be a physical battle or are they going to call everything? You know, and it just the ebb and flow of that. You know, I was just trying to figure it out, and you're right. I don't like talking to officials. I try to let them do their job. Just one of those things where I was trying to give our kids the best advantage, and sometimes it does call to try to get an explanation for a referee. So that's all that was.
Yeah, the explanations I can understand. It just seemed like there was a lot more conversation going on, maybe pointing out some things to them that you were hoping that they would call. And I think they did finally call some things that you had been pointing out to them, because I remember you saying something about, well, finally, or something like that they're calling it. But the one younger official didn't particularly want to talk to you in your neighborhood. He wanted to stand in middle court and talk to you. But the other two seemed to be a lot more cordial. And I know that you're not, you're respecting them for their job, and they're respecting you for your job. And I just, I sit there and I grin when you're working the officials like that, and you're certainly very good at it, by the way, Coach.
Thank you.
The Greenville game, they started 3 guys out of 5 that would be 6'4", 6'5", or taller. And of course, you talked about Isaiah and how good he is. And in the first half, he just didn't seem to do a whole lot. Second half, he kind of turned it on.
And a little bit of it was I thought in the first half, for the most part, we did a pretty good job of taking care of the basketball.
Yep.
Second half, we get into our little span, and we seem to have a 2 to 4 minute span where we can't make a pass or a catch, and that let them get out in transition. Anytime you let a scorer kind of see it go through the hoop, whether it's a free throw or a layup, it kind of gets them going. And then he started hitting some shots, and he's a very good player. Him along with the Rich kid. He did a very good job on the boards, and I'm so proud of our guys for how they battled. We played without Nate. We were severely outmatched, but we battled. And I think there in the fourth, end of the third, the fourth, we kind of ran out of gas a little bit. And once again, that the 2 days prep and not being able to be on the floor. However much or little you do on those 2 days, you're still on the floor and you're still getting some basketball conditioning. And when you take a day off, we see it all the time. When you have more than 1 day off, it takes you a minute to get your legs back. And if you play soon, then your legs leave you a little bit sooner. So I thought we just ran out of gas a little bit. But
You had a couple of guys that were pulling in their shirt, get me out of here.
Yes, and usually we don't have that. So you're right. It's just one of those things.
Yeah, well, you stuck with them. You were down 10 at halftime. You were still down only 10 at the end of the third quarter, and probably with a full roster, you may have been a lot closer when it got to the end of the ball game, 72-53. But you guys played hard the whole game, and even when you got to some of the subs in there later on in the ball game, they played hard too, and they did a good job of representing our school. I know you got to get out to practice, Coach. Let's talk about the holiday thing real quick. You got a first game is against Tecumseh, and then it's either going to be Belmont or Tip.
And we got to handle Troy tomorrow night, and we're looking to get beat Troy tomorrow night and then get on a little run here. And it's been a couple years since we've brought home that holiday trophy, and so that'll be our next goal. And it's a very nice holiday break where we can kind of hit the reset button a little bit and throw your schedule out the door and just focus on the tournament and give us an opportunity to win a championship.
Then you go right from the frying pan into the fire the first of the year. My gosh, you got
breaks in our schedule.
You got a good number of days off between the holiday tournament. You don't go back on the court until the 6th, and you open up the doors, and here comes Trotwood averaging over 100 points a ball game.
Exactly, and a team that is loaded. We are going to have to fight our butts off. A Division II team that is everybody in the Dayton area and in the state of Ohio is saying they're back, and they have a very good shot at getting to Columbus. So we have our hands full, but we're going to focus on beating Troy, and then we'll get ready for the holiday tournament. And then the nice thing is, as you mentioned, we're going to have several days here where we can get some good practice time on the floor.
Now, do you ever, and I don't want you to give away your plan or anything if you've got a plan for Trotwood, but a team like that scores 100 points a ball game, has all that talent. Do you ever consider just sitting on the ball?
No way.
No way?
It's not in our mentality. It's one of those things where you have to kind of enforce your will, and our will is not to sit on the basketball. When we beat Trotwood 3 years ago on our home floor, we didn't sit on it, and we're just not programmed that way. Some teams are, they play slow down anyways, but I think we're very good in transition. The biggest thing is versus Trotwood is we got to limit our turnovers.
Yeah, and they'll force them if they possibly can. But even if you did slow it down against Trotwood, you still most teams are still going to lose by 10 or 15. Maybe it's 35-20. So
at the end of the first half, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. And the thing is that whatever X's and O's you run or whatever, it still goes back to the game of basketball. Is you still got to put the ball in the hoop.
Yep.
You can hold it for as long as you want, but if you can't get it in that cylinder, you're not going to win. So.
All right, well, Coach, good luck Friday night with Troy, and in the holiday tournament, we'll be out here watching you. And certainly wish you and your family a Merry Christmas
Thanks,
and your
yours
team.
too.
And if we don't get back on the air, I don't think we will until after the Trotwood game. Folks, we hope you hang around and watch us, and we'll be back on. And we appreciate you being with us, and we'll see you next time.